we go. All right. So now we've got our base, we can lock in the base, and I can start playing with what I notice in the shadow. And I can also get rid of the lines here that we had before. I no longer need these, thank goodness. So here's what I'm noticing in the shadow. This is a really interesting style to me because, see if I can zoom in a little bit. It's still trying to maintain a cel-shaded look to reflect the game, but keeping the interest of a unique product art by using the textures. So for example, like let's say on the pant leg here, when we play the game, we will notice that this arm, for example, is just two colors, right? Pure cel shading, light color and shadow color. But if you zoom in, you also notice that they take a bit of time to add some of the reflective qualities and some marks of wear and tear and some of the highlights, like in the hair. And there's actually a little bit of subtle color difference here, right? This is not just all one flat blonde color. It's kind of there's some yellows and some more orange type. And that could also be the light hitting the character. We don't entirely know yet. But either way, you notice here on the pant leg, you've got this very basic color, and then you've got our shadow color. Right here in between, where there's this darker brown, is what's called our core shadow. So if you think about like a sphere with your highlight, your shadow, and that in between of the base color and the shadow is always a little bit darker and a little more saturated, that's called your core shadow. So that's what they're doing here. This stroke right here is your basic highlight. It's not as soft because they're still trying to maintain more of that cel shading design. So kind of here we have it right on the edge of the character, right, like right on her nose or right on her arm. So they're sort of mimicking that. They have a little bit of these strokes to maintain more of a painterly quality to them. And then you can see here as well on the shoulder, they really are just using two main colors with a bit of the stroke style. So you've got your main base color of the blue on the shirt, and then the navy color in the shadow. But the painterly strokes are what make it visually interesting and separate it from the actual game itself, right? Because if they just wanted to use the product art using the game, then they would just take screenshots of the renders from the game, but instead they wanted something that was a little more visually interesting. So they intentionally did something where they are trying to separate the marketing artwork and the game. Otherwise they would just use a 3D render, right? And it kind of gives us this mysterious, archaic, old feeling. So there's definitely a lot of intentional choices in this design style, which is really interesting because we don't really, we don't see that with too many games anymore, right? It kind of reminds me of old manuals, where sometimes you would play a game and the game manual had some of the concept art design in there. So they're using almost the rough concept art as their marketing art, which is a really interesting take on things.